what's going on with you guys? This is Kevin from Fast Count, and this is the WWE Bad Blood post show. I am joined by a man who has numerous accomplishments. He is the emerging face of the WNBA media coverage. He has been a media vet for over 20 years. You've heard him on ESPN Radio in New York. You catch him on the SmackDown After Show with Denise Salcedo. This is my guy, Robin Lundberg. What's going on, Robin?
Dressed to impress today. I got some grapes. I had some grapes. Bad Blood show, man. What's going on?
Man, this was an electrifying show, if you know what I mean. This is a show that going into it, I was very excited because this is a show that if you look at all throughout the card, every single match that we have had in this show had a meaningful long-term storyline behind. Robin, let me know, what was your expectations going into the show and how are you feeling coming out of it?
I mean, my expectations were pretty high considering there were some big feuds being paid off on this one. It wasn't like random matches thrown together. Like there were the culmination of some big feuds. I think for the most part they were met. There were a few lulls in the course of the entire show, which I'm sure we'll get to when we go through each thing. But I think they hit the most important beats. And really, isn't that what matters at the end of the day? Is did you get the big things right? Because that's the things people are going to take away. And I thought they got the big things right. Obviously, starting with the Drew McIntyre and CM Punk match, which was phenomenal, and ending with the tag match, which was pretty good. I mean, it was solid. The match itself, nothing, nothing you're going to remember for the rest of your life, but solid. And of course, The Rock. But the thing about The Rock return there, which you alluded to with the electrifying thing, was I thought it was going to happen. We saw he was going to be in Georgia. Or he was in Georgia. It felt like a foregone conclusion. And then they got me. Like they tricked me into thinking it wasn't happening. And that's what really, I think, took it over the top because the Jimmy Uso return was a good diversion. He comes out, you feel like, all right, that's the big thing. That's the main, big plot twist from this show. And then you hit The Rock's music. He comes out. And I like the fact that it was kind of like CM Punk's return at Survivor Series, sort of reminiscent of that, where Orton had already come out and that made you think Punk wasn't going to come out. But then when Punk came out, didn't say anything. Same thing with The Rock. I'm sure everybody's deciphered whatever he was counting to. Did he do 1, 2, 3? What? Does anybody know?
He went up to 4, and then he did the mob boss sign. Something's gonna go down, man.
Yeah.
Before we get into the show, throughout the show, they showed numerous Atlanta rappers. We got appearances by Metro Boomin. We got appearances by Lil Baby, Killer Mike. We got a little Yachty cameo. Who is your favorite Atlanta rapper of all time, Robin?
Andre 3000.
Okay, gotcha. I got you.
Outkast is a group, for sure.
That's true. Outkast is probably my favorite hip hop group of all time as well. But we're going to go into the show. And the first match to kick off this card was the Hell in a Cell match between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. Going into the show, the whole time I was thinking, once it was announced that this was going to be the match that was going to kick off the show, was the main event had to have a special return. And then once we saw the rumors that The Rock was going to be in the area, I kind of put it all together and saying, okay, The Rock is going to end the show because there's no way that a match that's been highly anticipated like this was going to kick it off if we weren't going to get a big boom type of appearance in the main event. Let me know, what were your thoughts on this match to kick off the show, and how are you feeling out of it?
I thought it was really well done. I mean, look, I'm not a fan of gratuitous for the sake of gratuitous, and you could have said that if this was a one-off match, but I feel like because there was so much build to this match, the feud had been going. When did Punk and Drew start feuding? I mean, it obviously predated. WrestleMania was when Punk cost Drew, so it's been a long time simmering. They've had multiple matches, different kind of matches. They had the bull rope match, and now they have a Hell in a Cell, and the Hell in a Cell is designed for violence, if you will. And it was WWE doesn't do that often. Like, it's not those kind of matches that you see very often, so it felt different because not only did Punk bleed, but Drew bled and wound up. Drew wore the crimson even better, I think, than Punk as the match went on. And then there was, like the wrench spot and the toolbox spot and the chair, the stair spot, a bunch of different things that they used to properly tell the story. They call back to the bracelet. I figured Punk was going to win and ultimately emerge victorious from this feud because, look, I mean, Punk is on the very, very short list of the guys who has the most motion and power in the business, really. So I thought it was well done. I mean, I thought it was a great culmination to the feud. I thought the feud allowed for them to do what they did in the ring without it feeling like you're just trying to, do something over the top. It felt in line with how much these guys actually hate each other. And I thought both of their performances were strong.
See, what I really like about this version of Punk that we have right now is what he lacks in athletic ability, he makes up for it in his storytelling ability. And this match, what I really liked so much about it was we've seen in the past that they had a Hell in a Cell PLE, and it felt like routine, like, okay, the PLE is in October, so we have to have a Hell in a Cell match. This match felt like, with this feud being so long and so many layers involved in it, like, this was very appropriate for them to have a Hell in a Cell. And I liked it so much, the fact that the whole match felt like a fight. Like, it didn't have one of those feelings where, a lot of times we see these blood feuds and we see a lot of these acrobatic moves and a lot of these different false counts and all these different things. This match felt like a fight from the beginning to the end. Where do you see these characters going off after this match? Where do you see Punk going, and where do you see Drew going?
Yeah, the Drew one is interesting. Who was it that Punk came out and had a little mini confrontation with somebody that foretold where he would go? And I could see, him going for Gunther or something along those lines, right? Like, I feel like Punk is going to main event kind of status. That feels natural for him. And to your point, Kevin, I think where Punk is in his career now, these are the kind of matches that he can thrive in, because it's not relying on him to do any big spots in the ring as far as like an acrobatic standpoint or a bunch of counters, flying off the top rope, none of that stuff. More of a deliberate, paced, violent style, which I think is what he can still pull off at his age and with any of his physical limitations. Where Drew goes is more intriguing to me, because this is the biggest and best program Drew's ever been a part of. I would say this incarnation of Drew is far and away the best version of Drew McIntyre that we've seen. So where is the natural next step for him? Does he get involved with, Damian Priest and that group and that whole conglomerate? I don't know. Where do you think Drew goes? Because I'm at a little bit of that's an interesting angle for me.
So for me, and I talked about it a little bit on some previous videos that I've been doing, two guys that are in two very similar situations to me are Drew McIntyre and AJ Styles. And in a perfect world, we would see a trade between the two. Because if you look at their situations, they're very similar. AJ Styles came back, and he's already feuded with Cody Rhodes, and he's already feuded with the LA Knight. So those are the two biggest sharks in the water that he can feud with on SmackDown, babyface wise. And Drew McIntyre, like you said, he mentioned that he feuded with CM Punk. He's also already had his feud with Damian Priest, and a match with Gunther doesn't really make sense because they're both heels at the same time. So these are two guys who are in very similar situations. I honestly don't know where Drew goes from here. The only thing that I could really possibly see him going with is a feud with Seth Rollins after he's done with Bronson Reed. Because from a babyface standpoint, I don't really see a lot of other big-time options for Drew outside of maybe Jey Uso.
Yeah, I mean, we still need Seth and Punk too, right? Like, that was ultimately where they were originally headed. So eventually we're getting Punk and Seth again. Yeah, Jey Uso makes sense as the Intercontinental Champion. That could work. You got to give him some credible opponents and a title reign, but you also don't want to bury Drew McIntyre after what he's done. That would be a tough one to book for me, because I don't think you can have either guy lose that program right now. I would put Drew into a program where he can go over at the beginning before he gets back up onto the, maybe he's in the upper mid card for a minute before he goes back up top.
So what you're saying is we're getting Drew versus Xavier Woods.
Yeah, maybe Drew ends the New Day officially.
Gotcha. So we're going to move on to the second match of the card, and we got Bayley versus Nia Jax for the women's championship. My whole big takeaway from this is these ladies were kind of put in a tough spot because they were coming off of following a match that was so fueled by the crowd and so invested that the crowd was into. So they were kind of in a tough situation having to follow that. And I also felt like the main takeaway from that match was everybody kind of anticipating a cash in from Tiffany Stratton. How do you feel about this match? And how do you feel about the storyline that's going on between Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax at the moment?
It's good. I thought the match was very good, actually. In fact, I thought considering the spot that they were put in, they did really well. Because following the match before, it was going to be tough for anybody. And let's be honest, I don't think this was the number one most anticipated match on anybody's dream card going into this this event. So I thought they did well. And I've been really impressed by Nia Jax during this run. I mean, I think from where she was to where she is now, she has really solidified herself as a top tier player for maybe years to come now that they can have in the main event picture. That I think they're doing this title reign justice. They're setting up her and Tiffany Stratton, which Tiffany Stratton is perfect with that Money in the Bank kind of thing that works with her character. So I thought the match was done well. I thought the result was the right way. I thought they set up the future pretty well. And ultimately my takeaway is, I just feel so much differently about Nia Jax than I once did in the past. I mean, she always had that physical presence. You can never take that away from her. But now she doesn't just feel like that's it. I mean, that's what it felt like before. That was it. And I know the stuff about her being sloppy and hurting people, and not being a great worker, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just talking about, for me, her entire identity was, here's a big girl. Now it's, all right, this is a real heel WWE Women's Champion.
I've done a complete 180 on Nia Jax. When she was previously with WWE under Vince McMahon for the majority of the time, I had no feelings towards Nia Jax. Like you mentioned before, she has the history of injuring her opponents. She caused one of the most iconic images in all of WWE history by breaking Becky Lynch's nose. I wasn't necessarily a big fan of hers, but ever since she's been brought back, I've loved every single thing that she's been into. I love the fact that she is the queen of the ring. She looks great. She looks like she slimmed down a lot from previously she did before. She's been involved in storylines that have a lot of meaning. Before, she kind of just felt like that big monster that you just plug in and really was directionalist. And I like the fact that her and Tiffany Stratton, the dynamic that they have between each other, I do believe that down the line that is going to be a big time money feud, because I think Tiffany Stratton is perfect in the role that she is in. And I think once we finally get that match, and ultimately I believe that she will defeat Nia Jax, I think that's really going to put Tiffany Stratton in a whole nother stratosphere, probably right next to Rhea Ripley as the most over female talent on the roster.
Well, they've also, they're slow building it. And anytime you slow build it, it generally means you're getting a better payoff because people get invested in it for longer. It doesn't feel like it was thrown together. It felt like, okay, here we go. Oh, there it is. That's kind of, I think what they're doing with it. And yeah, I think they're doing a good job elevating everybody involved other than Bayley. Ever since Bayley won the title, it's kind of been downhill for her.
It's been a tough couple of months for Bayley. I cannot lie to you. We are going to go into the third match of the night, and that is Finn Balor versus Damian Priest. I'm going to be 100% honest with you, Robin. Previously in different shows, people like to use the term, and it's kind of mean, the piss break match. All right. If I had to call a match that was that on this card, it was Finn and Priest. There wasn't many things that really caught my interest in this match. What I do like the fact that, like we talked about previously, is this was a match that had a long-term feud built into it. What are your thoughts on this match? And how do you feel about Damian Priest in the last couple of months since he's been building up this momentum?
I think he's way better than he was at, before I only really knew him for Bad Bunny. That was kind of his shining moment. Now he feels bona fide in recent times. Some of those performances that he's had, the chops back and forth that he took with Gunther, right? That was a real, as good old JR would say, slobber knocker. And Damian Priest has to me, elevated himself. I didn't have any issues with this match. Like, I would have said on paper it's a bathroom break match, but I didn't have any issues with it because it made natural sense. This has, they were involved in a faction together. The faction exploded. They no longer get along, and they had a nice, solid, quality match. Everything can't be the best, right? Like there was nothing wrong with it. Like I did not watch that and go, this sucks. I watched that and go, here's a pretty good match. It might be the one I'm surfing on my computer, doing some other stuff for whatever at various times, that kind of thing. But it certainly didn't give me any negative taste in my mouth. The low point in the card, I think, came in the match after this.
Think so. So a lot of these matches, like the CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, that was a combination of a feud. We all know that these two guys are going to be moving on after this. But the other matches, specifically this one, it's kind of going to prolong this feud. And I'm not really sure what else they can do after the match that we saw. I don't know where the direction of these guys are going to go. Where do you think we're going? And how do you feel that Finn is going to benefit from this?
I don't think he necessarily is, other than he's kind of in charge now. Like, I mean, but I don't think that's any different than, I mean, Finn Balor has respect within the wrestling community, but I don't ever see him on top in any way, shape, or form. I don't think there's a way for that to happen. Like, I would be completely and utterly shocked and stunned if we saw Finn Balor in a believable program as a threat to be one of the guys in the, world title picture. So, I think he's probably in the best phase of his career in recent times right now, simply because he's acting as a de facto leader of the clique, right? So that's a more elevated status than he had before, where he was more or less a henchman. He was more or less a henchman in the OG Judgment Day. Now he's more or less a central figure there. So I think this is probably as good as it gets for Finn Balor. Sometimes that's just what it is.
Yeah, his main event push, man, it died on that day where the apron broke when he was the Demon character and Roman Reigns pinned him. I feel like after that, it was pretty much where it was like anytime you would even consider putting Finn Balor in a main event program, like that should just be dismissed right away because of that. Like that moment, just his main event push died, and it was a sad situation for Finn and the Demon. I don't even think we've seen the Demon ever since then.
Oh, yeah, because look, the Demon is like, all right, what was the lore of the Demon was he hadn't lost as the Demon, but the Demon is a joke character. You can never prolong that for a long time. What am I like? Is the Demon going to be in an extended feud with somebody that's compelling? It doesn't have a character. It's just a Halloween costume for Finn Balor.
So you're telling me the cool makeup doesn't make a difference?
I mean, it makes it was cool for those one-off events and everything, but yeah, it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick in the truest form of it. It's a gimmick with no actual substance behind it.
So we take a break from the matches, and we saw throughout the night, it was teased that Triple H had a big-time announcement. And going into, before I thought about it, I was thinking, we're going to get like an international WrestleMania or something like that. I didn't realize that we had Crown Jewel coming up so soon. So he gets into the ring. He's talking about how we have Crown Jewel coming up. The crowd boos. And he sits there and you see something in the corner. And once you can kind of see the silhouette, you know that there was a belt involved. And he announced that at Crown Jewel, we will be having the World Heavyweight Champion versus the WWE Champion. And we'll be having the SmackDown Women's Champion against the Raw's Women's Champion. Not for each other's belt, but for the Crown Jewel Championship. That will be an annual tradition from now on. How do you feel about this, Robin? And are you excited about this announcement?
Yes, I liked it a lot, actually. I think, look, these international PLEs oftentimes feel like glorified house shows without a real identity. The identity of the Crown Jewel show is the Saudi blood money show. We get it, right? Like, but it's been a long time now. Like, you can dislike it. Fine. That's your prerogative. I get it. But, it's not changing. It's an institution. So now that it is that way, I like giving it its own identity and its own like the Royal Rumble has, right? Like Survivor Series used to really have back in the day, like what they're trying to do with King of the Ring now again. These events that have their own identity. Money in the Bank, obviously. Elimination Chamber, obviously. This is its own identity now. Like, okay, you know what to expect from Crown Jewel. How important is the Crown Jewel Championship going to be? Remains to be seen. But at least I now know what to expect going into a Crown Jewel, and then I know what to expect going into the Crown Jewel a year from the Crown Jewel, because it now has its own purpose and identity, which to me elevates it as a show.
I 100% agree with you on that as well. I know previous years that they had, I remember the very first Saudi Arabia show, they had like this greatest Royal Rumble where they gave Braun Strowman a belt. They also had kind of like this World Cup trophy a few years ago. And I feel like now that we have this Crown Jewel Championship, it, like you said before, it has meaning to the shows now. Because every single time in previous years when they had these shows in Saudi Arabia, it kind of felt like they threw a little prop or something or made some meaningless like battle royal or tournament just for those people to be satisfied. And now we actually have something that means something to not only the audience there in Saudi Arabia, but for the audience at home. And we see Gunther interrupt Triple H. And this is probably the funniest moment of the show for me. We see Gunther interrupt Triple H talking about how you can't have the pay-per-view. Such a bad habit. Me keep saying pay-per-view. You cannot have a PLE without the World Heavyweight Champion. He talks about how Triple H was the one who gave him the crown for the King of the Ring at the last Saudi Arabia PLE when he beat Randy Orton. And we saw throughout the night, outside of the Atlanta Rappers, we also saw appearances by different legends. We saw DDP, Mickey James, Big Papa Punk. But the biggest star of them all that we saw was Bill Goldberg. And if you remember Raw a few weeks ago when Bret Hart and Gunther had his interaction, we saw that Gunther mentioned that Goldberg was his favorite wrestler. We see Gunther make a callback to that comment to Bill Goldberg's face. The crowd erupts for Goldberg. Gunther told him that that's not really true, basically. And we see Goldberg with his family, and he tells Goldberg's son that I hope that your dad is a better father than he is a pro wrestler. And we get a tease of a confrontation between Gunther and Goldberg. This is a match that is kind of one of the most contrasting styles ever. And I kind of want to see it. You get teased a lot. I kind of want to see it. I know it'd be like a 2, 3 minute, 5 minute match at the max. Robin, what do you think about this segment? And would you be interested if they told you, hey, Mr. Lundberg, you can have Gunther and Goldberg?
Absolutely. Sign me up right immediately. Any event, anywhere. Gunther, by the way, I think where it stands out is how good he's getting as a heel on the mic. I mean, even the line to Bret Hart and now the line to Goldberg. I mean, he did it with both guys in the period of a couple weeks. He's gotten really strong in that. So a couple notes since we've been talking. Triple H is speaking right now, and he said never say never to a Goldberg and Gunther match, which is basically the same as saying it's happening.
Yeah.
So that Kevin Owens has also attacked Cody Rhodes and perhaps run him over with a car in the backstage parking lot. And The Rock cut a promo on Instagram Live. So all of that stuff has happened since the show has gone off the air.
Oh my God, no wonder why everybody's watching that. Guys, I know you got The Rock, but you got Lundberg and Kevin. This is just as good. So we saw, one of the things that people, you go online and you see a lot of hate for Goldberg. And I get it. Goldberg's no Bret Hart or Will Ospreay or Shawn Michaels. But I've always thought that the main important thing in wrestling is, do you put asses in the seats? Do you get a reaction? And do you sell merch? Or do you have people buy pay-per-views at the time when he was in his prime? And he did all that. Goldberg is a draw. You saw tonight that when they put Goldberg on the screen, the crowd went crazy.
What's the word the kids use now? Aura, right? Goldberg has aura. He has aura. He's believable. Maybe because he actually ends people's careers, but he's believable, right? Like Goldberg There's nothing about, from the door knock by security to the walkout, everything about him is moveset. He doesn't need to do anything else because what he does is effective. And I feel like he could still do that now. And I feel like Gunther is the perfect type of foil to that, to carry that style to a quality match with that physicality involved. Because, Goldberg will take the chops from Gunther across the chest. He'll eat a lot of that sort of stuff. And Gunther will eat Goldberg's power moves. So you do that back and forth and figure out how you finish it. But to me, that's a no-brainer money match. And yeah, I mean, hell, in other than the NWO, Goldberg was the biggest thing in the history of WCW, I would say. I'm trying to think of anything else. Sting had his moment as a babyface before, and then the Crow character, maybe you could throw that into the mix once he was the Crow character, going with. But to me, when I'm thinking of, because I was a WWE fan for the most part, but of course I was just like everybody else enthralled by the NWO. And how you think like when you're kind of rooting for one thing, but you know what the real threat is from the other thing. It's like when you're watching football and the team doesn't go for it on fourth down, and you're like, yes, because they should have gone for it on fourth down.
Yeah.
You were much more afraid of them going for it on fourth down. So that's the same feeling I had about the NWO and Goldberg. Like, that's why people were like, he's a ripoff of Stone Cold Steve, all of that, because there was a threat from Goldberg because he had it. The thing you can't teach, he's got it. He still has it. They cut to him. Wrestling fans can say whatever they want about the guy, but when there's a wrestling crowd and they show Goldberg on camera, they cheer.
For sure. He is probably, and I can't think of any other industry or any other individual in the industry where, like I said, he is probably the guy who's made the most money doing the least at his job. And he's probably the individual that most people strive to be, doing the least amount of work and getting paid either just as much or more than the top people in the industry that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Ultimate Warrior at one point in his career, right? Like, but those characters work. The real life action figure superhero kind of works in wrestling if they've got if they carry themselves the right way and they feel believable. And I think those two things, like Goldberg carried himself like a badass and he looked like a badass with his wrestling style. Because I'm sorry, like if you're in a real fight, you're not necessarily going to be applying, certain maneuvers. You might just spear somebody and then jackhammer them. Like that's what Goldberg did.
Seeing a human being get jackhammered in a real fight would be. So we are going to move on to the next match. We got Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley for the Women's Championship. We see Dom get put in a shark cage and hoisted on, from the ceiling. This is a guy who's dealt with a lot of trauma. Think about this, man. He's had his custody of who was going to be his dad fought right in the middle of a ring. We've had him hung in a shark cage from many feet in the air. This is a guy who's had a traumatizing life. What do you think about this match? And what do you see going forward from this?
I thought it was solid for a while. I did not like the finish. The finish was a little anticlimactic and strange to me with Raquel Rodriguez coming back and just felt a little out of place. I get it. They're trying to put her in a certain status, align her with Liv, but then she even puts Liv on top of Rhea when it was already a DQ. And especially with the heat that had been built between Liv and Rhea and the Dom element. I liked Rhea hitting Dom like a piñata. I actually got concerned. I thought Dom was falling out of the cage for a second.
I did too.
That was concerning. But yeah, to me, the ending was a little flat and awkward. Just wasn't executed particularly well. And no offense to Raquel Rodriguez, but what we were just talking about with Goldberg, she is positioned to be in that realm as a female because she's, big, strong in stature, but she just doesn't have it. She doesn't have the it that we're talking about. Some people do, some people don't. Can you discover it? Sure. Like again, Nia Jax is a good example. Someone who tapped into something that really worked for them and changed our perception. So I don't want to write her career off or anything like that. I'm not trying to diss, but as a viewer, that's how I feel. It's just like, okay, Raquel Rodriguez is back. I didn't see that coming, but I also don't see why it was involved here after everything that's transpired in this love triangle kind of deal.
So it really just confuses me because now I feel like this feud is going to get prolonged, but I don't feel like there's any new layers that can be added to it. Like, I feel like tonight probably should have been the blow off. Whether we saw Liv lose the championship and we see her dump Dom because her whole reasoning for having Dom around was to keep the title, or we see Liv win and Jey Uso interferes with the match and sweeps Rhea off her feet. Something to where we would have had a conclusive conclusion to this feud. Now I just don't know where it goes because I don't know how Raquel is going to fit into this because, like you said before, this is a love triangle, and I don't know how we fit that into this storyline.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. And where they're going from it just felt like it felt awkward. I guess that's the only word I can use to describe it. It felt like an awkward conclusion to everything we've seen with that group. And maybe it's because they don't plan on it being included. You know, that's probably why, right? Like, it's like, okay, now Raquel is friends with Liv, so we keep that going and try to keep this going because it's really worked for them, at least from what I see on social and YouTube views and the like. It feels like that's one of their hottest things that you can possibly do content around. So maybe they're just trying to keep it going, and this is their way to keep it going without having a definitive conclusion in that match.
So there was a segment. This is kind of off topic when it comes to wrestling, but it happened on the wrestling show. So throughout the night, we see kind of this VIP area where the hosts of Bad Blood are there. You got Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, and Naomi, and they're in the suite, and they're interviewing Metro Boomin. All right. And if you look a little bit in the background, you see Little Yachty. All right. Mm-hmm. And as we know, Little Yachty is very close to the GOAT, the sixth god, Drake Graham. And we see Metro Boomin, who is obviously one of the members of the 20v1 that was conspiring against the GOAT. What do you think about this situation, Robin? Do you think that Little Yachty is a Benedict Arnold for being in the suite with Metro Boomin?
I mean, maybe he wants some hot beats. But Lil Yachty, didn't him and Drake already have a falling out? Wasn't he removed from the one? What happened with that Super Soaker? So I couldn't invest myself enough to go down the rabbit hole to figure out what happened there. But something happened there, no?
It was a copyright issue. So the guy who does the beat, he is a born-again Christian. And if you've heard the Super Soak song, it is very explicit. So he wouldn't clear the sample unless they made a clean version of the song. So they took Yachty off of it. They re-recorded it with Drake solo on it, and it still wasn't clean.
Why did they take Yachty off of it? I guess is the point.
I honestly, for that part, I don't know. But the second version that came out that was just Drake was much better to me. But that song still wasn't cleared because
but then Drake didn't have the swag that he gets from Yachty on the.
What?
It was the swagless version of Super Soak.
The swagless version of Super Soak. The only song I ever liked from Yachty. Shit, I can't even think about it.
I like that project. He did one project I like. What was that called? It was like a rock album almost.
Yeah. I know.
I thought it was pretty cool. I rocked with that.
I like the song he did with J. Cole. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, that wasn't bad. Poland was kind of inventive as its own song. What was the album called? He had a.
I forgot what it's called, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he had a cool little. Let's start. Was it called Let's Start Here?
Might be. I know that. I think the cover is like people with like their mouths kind of.
Yeah, Let's Start Here. Yeah,
yeah.
It was like kind of like a rock song. I thought like a psychedelic kind of rock song. I thought he did a good job with that. I thought that project was cool. I rock with that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, so in my opinion, we're adding Little Yachty to the list that LeBron is on, that he is out of the camp.
Yeah. If everybody's crazy, you're the one who's insane, you know?
I don't know. I might be the crazy one. So, so we're gonna go into the main event, and we have Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns teaming up against Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. We got a really cool entrance from Cody Rhodes. If you saw this viral clip that's been going around, you saw a college that did their band played Cody Rhodes' theme song, and they brought that band to do Cody Rhodes' theme song live, and I thought it was really cool. But the main takeaway from this match, outside of the things I got to deal with The Rock, is if you notice throughout this match, Cody Rhodes is a huge star, as we know. He sells a lot of merch. He's beloved by the kids. He is probably the cleanest face that WWE has out, since John Cena doing media appearances and all these things. He does all the house shows. But if you heard the reaction from the crowd, and even the fact that Cody Rhodes came out first before Roman, the star power and the aura, it's a big difference between the two guys.
Yeah, look, Cody has a few things going for him. One, you mentioned it. The kids love him. So you can't dismiss that. That's a big deal. That's not nothing. And the other thing is the AEW IWC crowd loves him for the most part because they feel a connection to him. He's the one that rebelled against WWE, went over and started AEW. So he's like in their sense their champion, in a way. And that's a groundswell of movement. So I think when you take that, you combine it with the kids, it becomes pretty powerful. But Roman's just, it is, it's Hulk Hogan. And then it was, after Hulk Hogan, it was Stone Cold and The Rock. After those guys, it was John Cena. And now it's Roman Reigns. That's that's the era that Roman is a part of. And it just is what it is when that's the case. I mean, everybody understands. Everybody, whether they'll admit it or not, everybody knows it. And that's communicated by his entrance. It's communicated by, this moment and everything that goes along with it. The reason he had the championship for the longest time, whatever people complained about, clearly that was doing well for WWE. Because if it was not doing well for WWE, it would not have continued to go on. And that's only something you do when it is working very, very well, and you milk that sucker until it is dry, right? And that's what they did. So, I mean, Roman's just the guy. He's the guy of this era, of this generation. And that doesn't mean Cody sucks. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with Cody. It just means he's not Roman.
For sure. I'm not going to compare this match to this match that I'm going to bring up quality-wise, but it really has the same effect to me as Hogan versus The Rock. Now, if you watch Hogan versus The Rock without the sound, all right, it's a match that's kind of really slow and boring and plotting. What makes that match is how crazy the crowd is and how invested they are into the two guys. And that kind of happened tonight. We saw once Roman got into the ring, we saw the crowd go crazy. We saw in the beginning of the match, we saw when they both were standing next to each other, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. We saw loud Roman Reigns reactions. We saw a little bit of a loud Cody Rhodes reaction and then a switch back. This match to me was this generation's mega powers combining. How do you feel about, this kind of goes back to the segment with Gunther. How do you feel about a potential Cody Rhodes versus Gunther match at Crown Jewel?
I think it'll be a great match. I think those two, that's almost a dream match as far as fit and chemistry goes. So I think that's great. Can't get any better than that. In fact, it would be the first credible opponent Cody Rhodes has faced since he won the championship. Like, credible in the sense of you could see Cody Rhodes not winning the match, right? Like, which you haven't seen. I know he was just attacked by Kevin Owens, so I'm assuming that's where his feud is going next. In the meantime, that will be his next feud to pass the time, but before you get to Crown Jewel and the showdown with Gunther. And then whatever's happening with The Rock, who, what did he set up? Because to me, there are these 3 money matches, like mega money matches, just sitting on the table. Rock and Cody, given how hot that feud was. Rock and Roman, obviously, given the history that they almost went with last year. and then Cody and Roman 3, which they've alluded to during this entire, uneasy alliance between the pair. But I'm wondering if they're doing, you think they go triple threat at this coming WrestleMania to do it all at once?
Man, that is so tough because, like you said, those are 3 money matches that in any given year can main event WrestleMania. You can also sit there and kind of slide this match into, and we kind of got a little bit of a taste of it, is Jacob Fatu and Roman Reigns. I don't know where we're going to go when it comes to WrestleMania because you see all these conflicting reports online. A few months ago, you had it set in stone. We're getting Roman against maybe Fatu, and then we're getting Cody versus The Rock. That's set in stone. But we all know how wrestling is. Things change so dramatically from a week-to-week basis. If, gun to your head, right? If you can only get one of the 3 matches, Roman versus Cody 3, Cody versus The Rock, or The Rock versus Roman, and you don't get the other 2, which would the match that you would choose?
Cody Roman 3.
I had a feeling. I knew you was gonna go with Roman because I know your love for the OTC. I knew you were
but I
gonna
could have gone Roman Rock, but I just feel like Cody and Roman have such good chemistry in the ring. It's almost guaranteed to be a class. But I mean, it's silly not to do all of them. But I did wonder, I've seen even people do a 3-box with them since this event ended, and I do wonder if they're possibly heading in the triple threat direction, which could then get you to 4 matches, right? Like you could almost do a year-long program that way, where all your tentpole events. Because look, SummerSlam's in my backyard, MetLife Stadium. I don't think enough of a big deal right now is being made of the fact that is 2 nights. Because yes, they announced it was going to be 2 nights, and that was a big deal. But the one that they announced was for 2026, right? Minnesota?
Yeah, the one in Minnesota.
Minnesota was 2 nights like that. So that was the first. And we're like, oh, wow, SummerSlam. But this is the first 2-night SummerSlam that's actually going to take place. So you think they ain't going to stack that sucker? They're going to stack that sucker. They want 2 WrestleManias. Yeah. They want WrestleMania in the summer, and they want WrestleMania in the, late winter, early spring, whatever time of year that is. Yeah. I guess the beginning of spring. So I think they want beginning of the spring WrestleMania and end of summer WrestleMania. And, obviously the Rumble has its own identity. The other shows have their own identity. But I think that's what they're going for. So I could see, hell, maybe it's at SummerSlam, the triple threat match. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're getting one of those matches or all 3 of those guys in the same match at SummerSlam after WrestleMania as the next logical step in this whole story.
Honestly, man, within the next 5 years, I'm not gonna go to FanDuel and put a bet on this, but I honestly think within the next 5 years, all 4 of the major pay-per-views are going to be 2 nights. The Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and either Money in the Bank or Survivor Series, whichever one that they choose that they deem to be the other 4. And we mentioned that The Rock made his appearance, man. This kind of opens Pandora's box for me because we have War Games coming up soon. Next month, and we get all these different fantasy bookings of the War Games match that we're going to get between the Bloodline. I personally don't see The Rock physically being involved in that match, but what do you think? Do you think The Rock will be inside of the War Games match, or do you think he'll have like a surrogate, maybe a guy like Hikuleo or somebody else?
Oh no, I think The Rock's going to be involved. I think The Rock's going to be involved on a regular basis again. I think look, you have to remember this. One, I think The Rock's getting the strap again one more time before it's all said and done. I think The Rock is getting the strap 100%. I would place a bet on that. And you have to remember why is The Rock so invested? He has every reason to be. He is on the board. Like, this is not The Rock coming back to work for Vince, who he may have and was loyal to and all that stuff. I mean, a lot of whatever we want to say about Vince, a lot of these guys have a love for Vince and a loyalty to Vince. That's been proven over the years. But The Rock is not coming back out of loyalty or to work for the boss. The final boss character is born out of him actually being the boss. So the better the company does, the better The Rock does. The best way for the company to do good is for The Rock to be a part of the company. So I think you're going to see when his schedule allows, when he has a pocket where he can be involved, I think he already proved it last year. The Rock was a mainstay there for a minute. He wasn't just around for a cup of coffee. He was around. So I think, yeah, he'll be not on every show, not on every PLE, but I do think when he's around, it's going to be cutting actual promos on the shows and having a match here and there when it is called for by the magnitude of this situation.
It's so funny, man, that you mentioned that about The Rock getting the championship again. If you remember in the mid-2000s, a lot of people gave Triple H a lot of flack for being, the guy who's married to the boss's daughter and was a mainstay in the creative. And he had his infamous Reign of Terror where he was the champion in mowing down every viable wrestler that there was on the roster at the time. What do you think the reaction is going to be online once The Rock puts the belt on himself?
I think it's going to be good. I mean, I think it's going to be good. I think we got rid of the negativity. It happened naturally. And it was people revolted against The Rock. I mean, you never would have thought you would have seen that, but people legitimately revolted against The Rock, which created this character. And sorry, it's not possible to hate on this character. It's not possible to hate on The Rock. He's too good at what he does. So if you're hating on The Rock now, you're just a hater. As long as he's like actually around to do it and doesn't take the belt and go. Yeah, but that would work for his character too, right? If he won and then he's going to film, he just like does a vignette here and there from the set of his movie with the title. He's like, I'll be back there when the time is right or something like that. So I think people are done with the negative feelings about The Rock. I think they got all those out of their system.
That would be so cool that he's at like a press junket for Moana 2.
Yeah.
Has the belt in his lap and they're asking him about wrestling. He's like, I'll go back when I feel like it. Or, and honestly, I think his film schedule, as far as I know, is pretty clean at the moment. He just got done filming The Smashing Machine that's about UFC legend Mark Kerr. He has Moana 2 that's supposed to be, wrapped up filming. I know that he has stuff with the XFL and he has that Netflix movie coming out. So I do believe that he is going to be a mainstay on WWE television. And prior to this revolt that he had, man, I always thought that no matter what movie that The Rock would come out, whether it was a great movie or if it was a box office flop or he had a snafu on social media or something like that, I thought the one area that no matter what he ever did, that he would be golden no matter what was wrestling. So it was strange to see that he was actually sitting there having people boo him. Was that something you ever thought you would ever see?
No, I never thought I would see the crowd in mass turn on The Rock, like actually hate him. Not hate him for show, but they actually hated The Rock. It was like Rocky sucks again. It was only a fleeting moment. And it was the kind of thing you could actually see in pro wrestling. But yeah, I mean, it's part of the history of, in so many ways, last year's WrestleMania was its own Montreal screw job. Not in, the vitriol that came out after it, but in the blending of realism with the story and how memorable it will be. Because no one's ever going to forget what took place to get to WrestleMania 40.
For sure, man. It was such a crazy thing, man. I remember listening to Busted Open the next day and had grown men coming, crying into Dave LaGreca's show saying how that they did this to Cody and how they hate The Rock now. It was insane. I never thought I would hear grown men. And then there was a story about this guy. He said that he drove 12 hours to the next episode of Raw to support Cody. And I knew Cody was loved. But I didn't know that the guy was loved so much to the point to where people would boo The Rock because they love him so much.
Oh, no. And they had a heat and it created that feud. Like to the point where Rock and Cody felt bigger than Cody and Roman. That's the only time during this entire process that Roman has taken a back seat in any way, shape, or form. That felt hotter going into WrestleMania than Roman and Cody. Now, Roman and Cody turned out to be, arguably the biggest spectacle in the history of the business. But, it worked wonders. It worked magic. And it elevated Cody Rhodes in the process. Like, I think Cody Rhodes is a bigger deal now because that happened. because the fans stuck up for him and they put him on the level. Like, if you would have told any casual person, is Cody Rhodes on that level, most people would probably say no. And I would bet you the people in the company would have said no, right? Like, they told us with their actions that they said no, because they wanted to go to, when things didn't work out the way that they wanted. It looked like they wanted, obviously, a different set of WrestleMania matches because they thought Punk was going to be involved in everything. But after that, it was, oh, we're going straight to Rock Roman. See you, Cody. Do your sad puppy dog look and let's move on. But through the process of that, the fans elevated Cody. And now Cody is thought of, he's always going to have people say his run's not as exciting or whatever. And Roman came out last tonight, all these little things. But Cody has been put up a notch because of all that. And he doesn't feel like someone with a fleeting title run. He feels like now one of the titans of the era in the business.
For sure. And we're going to get out on this, man. What do you, Dave rating star system, man, what do you give this show? And are you looking forward to Monday Night's Raw after this show?
I'm probably looking forward to SmackDown more because of the Bloodline involvement. I would give the show 4 stars, I think, is the appropriate rating. And I don't say that as like 4 stars is not a bad score, by the way. So when I say that, I don't say that. But I thought the, opening match is an arguable 5-star kind of match for what it was.
Yeah.
And I think The Rock's return with Cody and Roman together and Jimmy Uso is the kind of moment that you want. So between those two things, it has to be like above a 3. It goes to a 4. And the rest of the card was probably a 3.5, right? Like, so give me a 4. I could see going to 4.5, but I feel a strong 4.
Yeah, I give you a 4 as well. I'm kind of a really tough critic, man. A show has to really, really blow my mind to the point to where it's like the level of like I don't even know what show I would bring up, but it has to be like a perfect show in my mind for it to be a 5-star. And this was a notch below that, only because of some of the matches in the middle were kind of filler matches. The angle to close the show was great. Loved every single second of it. The Hell in a Cell match, I agree with you as well. That is a 5-star match, in my opinion. It had every single thing that you would want in a wrestling match, in a blow-off, in a feud. Let the people know where they can find you, man.
Yeah, of course. Follow me on all the social medias. Robin Lundberg on Twitter, the Robin Lundberg on Instagram. But the YouTube show, Robin Lundberg Show on YouTube, Women's Fast Break on SI. And for the wrestling heads out there, you can catch me Friday night SmackDown post show with Denise Salcedo.
Gotcha. If you guys are into the WNBA, this is the guy for you. I got the link to his channel in the description. I am Kevin Zwicker, and I'm out.
Eat.